COO of UKCloud. And thank you for letting me come and talk to you a little bit about our journey with BizOps and AIOps. Ironically, our journey was a flip. It's AIOps first to BizOps, but I'll talk to you through that as we go through this 20-minute slot. So, in terms of my background, so I worked at big corporates, Rackspace, Microsoft, British Airways, Barclaycard. My focus was really around how do we empower our customers? How do we get the most out of the technologies that we have in organizations which were far bigger than anything I'd worked in before? Taking leadership roles in these kind of organizations teach you that customer is first. And one of the biggest things about BizOps, in my view, is about the customer. It's how we drive the experience and the outcome that we're looking to achieve. And it's something that you're seeing every day with some of these companies are on this screen. To get this really, really right. When I was there many, many years ago, it was a bit of an afterthought. And over my time in Korea, I made the decision I wanted to go somewhere a little bit smaller, a little bit more agile, and try and do things a little bit differently. UKCloud as a business, we are very much focused on public sector. We offer sovereignty of data, something which I know is big for a lot of people on this call, and we focus on our ability to provide that outcome to our clients through offering data centers within the UK. We have around 250 workloads to government, and then we have around 300 partners, big names that you'll recognize, that are really focused on driving great outcomes for the public. This is one of the largest in Europe in terms of our scale and growth, winning the Hiscox Awards. The reality, though, is times have changed. And what we noticed as a business is that people don't care about where their data sits quite as much as they used to in the UK. So we had to evolve. And we've had to evolve through our market, but also through the technologies and processes that we are using to enable the outcomes our clients need. We've moved more into healthcare, which is really prevalent at the moment, helping with some of the COVID studies in the UK, but also into areas like Secret, which I will touch upon later on. But the biggest thing for us is that the evolution of the service to compete with the hyperscaler, the AWS of this world, the large Azure platforms, Microsoft's platforms. They're cannibalizing the workloads that we typically would have gone into as a business. We started out very much in a virtualized environment, high cost, but trying to build a true cloud for our customer base. We've moved more into containers. We've gone serverless, and we're now offering managed service to our customers, which are many others though, is how do you keep that efficiency up? How do you drive improvements, and how do you get a great outcome utilizing the frameworks and the options that you have available to you? Like I've said before, and many times in other presentations, a fool with a tool is still a fool, right? And we end up buying more technology to try and make things better and make us more efficient. But we had to change our entire approach, and we had to look at how we could do things differently. This really kicked off back in February 2019. Anyone who works in IT and technology will know the fear of hearing that your data center is on fire. Now, ours wasn't quite up at that level, but in 2019, when I was out ironically shopping for a barbecue, we sat and we were looking and listening on the phone to someone telling me there was an overheat in the data center. That overheat resulted in us having to shut down. We wanted all of our customers over to our secondary, and we worked all weekend to rectify and remediate the problem. The problem itself, a chiller failure, resulted in our technologies stalling, equipment. And as you can imagine, real problems in terms of our own market view. We worked really, really hard to try and stop anything from really affecting our long-term relationship with our clients, and did well to manage that. And we were celebrating at the end of the weekend that we managed to keep our services up and running, and it only cost us 300K. That's insane, right? Who in their right mind would be celebrating that? But then we remembered that actually, throughout this whole process, the ultimate thing was our customer being happy. And we looked at what other things we could do to support us. And at that time, we'd been running a proof of concept with a company called Moogsoft. Now, Moogsoft themselves are really focused on trying to provide AI, artificial intelligence, around the monitoring space. That monitoring solution that we had in place as a proof of concept, in hindsight, we looked back. We looked at the things that we were seeing on the ground, and would we have reacted differently? The great thing with products like Moogsoft is it allows you to learn off your environment. What we saw from the data was actually when you took all of our data points around monitoring, we would have seen the overheat 48 minutes earlier. That doesn't sound like much, but we believe that 48 minutes would have completely stopped the problem. We would have got to the chiller failure prior to it causing an impact. We'd have been able to reduce the heat to the point before our equipment failed. And actually it would have stopped us having any major issues. Now that was a great hindsight piece for us. And that POC was actually what led to us driving and buying and purchasing that product. So we went AIOps, but AIOps is not the answer. And everyone on this call will know that. AIOps was the start of our journey, but the reality was we had to move into an environment of BizOps. Now for me, there are 5 core pillars to BizOps. I'm going to talk you through a little bit of our journey as we go through this. The first element is the data pillar. Engaged resources is key, as is the technology we're using. And finally, the friction-free element that I'm going to discuss at the very end. The biggest thing for us when I look at these 5 pillars is that most people will focus on only one, the tech. We had to look at all of them, and we had to look at them as a unity, because ultimately BizOps, like DevOps, isn't a thing. It's a framework. It's a way of life. It's a culture that you want to build. And our customer journey is really key for us. We started out with NPS of -15, -15. One of the worst scoring organizations I've been in. When I left and stood down as COO, and now I'm a director within the business, but when I left as COO and stepped down, we were at +56. We worked really hard to focus on our outcome. The reason why I see this is so key to the way that we operate and the way that BizOps runs is that actually you want to be focused on the outcome of your client. When we understood more about what our client needed and the outcomes we were trying to achieve, whether it be an internal or external customer, you're able to articulate the process to meet that. By understanding our client journey, we're able to set their expectations and we're able to manage their expectations. We enabled them to be wrong with dignity and respect, but we stopped there being issues, right? We enabled us to have a nice bracket around what we were doing for that client. And that was such a key element for us, and a key element for anyone going in BizOps. Is something you should really, really consider as you take on your journey. Think about your client. Once you've done that, we looked at our data points. That data pillar, you think about the conversation I've just had about Moogsoft. That element of data and that view is so key. For many of you starting out on your BizOps journey, and a lot of the technologies you look at, they will give you a single silo of technology. That won't help you. Many organizations are looking at how do I measure cases or opportunities? And ultimately, that is not BizOps. Ultimately, that is the old way of measuring and metrics. You need to start thinking bigger about your data. You need to remove the silos and the walls that are withholding you. When I look at the data that we run for our service now, we look at things like product success with a customer health index made up of multiple metrics. We look at things like partner performance. By expanding and making your metrics and measurements more complex, you actually have a much wider view of your business, and you're able to see BizOps as a success. You're able to start to see the impact you're having. More importantly, with the technologies you're probably going to be seeing in an AI, you're able to impact everything you're doing through a flick of a switch or a motion or an action. And that is what is key when you start to look. But the biggest thing when you start to look at your data and you remove the silos is you start to rely more on your culture of a business. Your data will naturally bleed across your teams. And at UKCloud, we looked at a very unusual source for our inspiration for how you should behave and perform as an organization. We look back in the good old days of English football, where, we learned a lot about English football. We know that they can't take a penalty and they're never going to get through a semi-final. But the reality, and they can't beat the Germans, right? But the reality of the situation is that we looked at the golden generation and we realized the biggest problem you have with the golden generation of football in England was they're a bunch of individuals, a bunch of silos. They weren't working together as a form. They were actually pulling away and separate. And it was the most underperforming team that English soccer had ever had. You look back in the World Cup 2 years ago, There was a leadership and a culture which was more about togetherness. It was about driving the BizOps outcome. It was about driving the right behavior and mentality. It was about bringing complex metrics together to understand team performance. And that led to us trying to work hard on engaging sure that our employees loved working at UKCloud and understood what they were going to do. To do that, we knocked out OKRs, which is our objectives and key results. But we focused on our objectives at a top level, being focused around BizOps. So we looked at what is it that we were trying to achieve as part of our organizational structure? What is it we wanted to do? By doing that, it enabled my development teams, my delivery teams, my infrastructure teams to come up with their own objectives. They drove how they were going to meet mine. By doing that, I set the high-level template at the top level, and I enabled my teams to come up with their own ways of operating and working, their own measures and metrics, which together formed the complex measures that we talked about in the data section. Culture shift saw a huge change in our employee engagement. It meant they all bought in. It meant they understood. It meant they fought and supported each other. When we set out on our BizOps journey, we put a BizOps team in place of sorts. And without this, they would have failed, because ultimately, as part of the OKR structure, they provide a coaching role and a support role. They're not individually trying to drive the BizOps agenda within the business. They are driving it as part of the organization and as part of the business, which is so, so critical. It is the technology, it's a sexy bit that you guys want to know more about, right? And the technology was key. Once you understand your customer journey, you've understood your data points, you've got employees who are engaged, then you can utilize the technology. When I said we started with AIOps, I'll give you a little stat. We used 25% of the features within MuleSoft, our AI tooling, back in middle to end of 2019. We're now using around 80 to 85% of those same features. So by actually having the other elements mapped out, we can make better use of our technology. And now we've supplemented MuleSoft with products like Rundeck, Grafana, Tableau, which gives us a much greater overview of exactly how our technology should be working. It allows us to remove the noise so we can see what is at the bottom of the ocean. We're able to clearly understand when alerts are going off, what is causing that, and then react to it. And even more than that, we're starting to build automation, which means when we see an alert, we are able to react to that alert with immediate effect, without an engineer even being required to touch a server. So let me just take you through a quick video. Hopefully this is going to work and you're going to hear it, which is an example of how we work with our clients. And the reality of where we find ourselves now in UKCloud is exactly that. We're in a position where we can drive fully automated from an alert. So an alert for our customer comes in, we're able to then drive. So if you didn't hear any sound, apologies. That was to show actually the situation. You're able to understand what happens on an alert. You can drive that, and you're able to then automate the action So we have completely made that friction-free environment for our customers. So as we see things happen, Moog will automatically raise the ticket into Ivanti, which is our service management tool. Ivanti will call a job. The job will rectify the situation. We will notify the customer via email. The customer will be able to respond back. It will close the ticket in Ivanti, and ultimately it'll end up closing our alert. So that whole journey has now been completely automated through for our client base, which is really key. What's that actually meant for us as a business? That's meant that we can explore into new markets. So the first thing we're able to explore into is one of the areas we talked about at the very start, is defense. So in that secret space, the areas that we really touch upon are data which you're not allowed to see. So if you're into a situation where you're dealing with a war zone or things like the sex offenders register, which would sit upon the UKCloud, a lot of that data you're not allowed to actually touch as an engineer. So BizOps for us has really been an enabler. It's enabled us as an organization to move into that market space. It's allowed us to actually go and start talking to these organizations and offering them a cloud solution, which before they could not have taken. They wouldn't have had that opportunity. That means that we don't have to hire 500 people with DV clearance. It means we're using the technologies we have available to us, the outcomes we're trying to achieve with our clients, and the data points all working in unison to provide a great seamless experience and ultimately give people like the Ministry of Defence in the UK an opportunity to utilize cloud technologies, which up until now have been really restricted for them, with a lot of the MOD refusing to utilize cloud-based solutions and going for infrastructure on their own sites. So that's really helped us move into those new markets. So what did we learn? So when I think about some of the key things that I've talked about today, the things that we've learned around the whole project around BizOps. Firstly, you've got to bring your teams with you for the ride. As I said earlier, we tried the option of using a BizOps team and just trying to let them run it. It didn't work. We had to embed it as part of our OKRs and part of our objective strategy. By doing that, we as a business move things forward and quickly. That OKR process took us 12 months. But by the time we got it running, we're able to now do far more, far quicker, and far more efficiently. Without that, your teams will be impotent, right? You need BizOps to be part of your culture. The next thing we learned, don't just buy a tool. One of the biggest challenges a lot of our customers will see, and you guys will see, is you go out and you get told, hey, buy this amazing AI or machine learning tool. The reality is that on its own is only going to give you about 25% of its features. I know, I had that problem. What we need to be able to do is really look at how you embed that tool to meet the objectives that you're running with. That investment should be something which is valuable. It shouldn't just be something which is done because you've seen some great stats or some data on it. The only way to do that is ensure the tools support and facilitate the processes and the BizOps methodology that you're using. Finally, I would never recommend burning down a data center to try and get your business case through. Challenges, right? And you always react to what happens in your environment. But the reality is when things are really tough and things are very difficult, you as a business have to react. We reacted to get ourselves out of a situation. We invested to move ourselves forward. And at UKCloud, we continue to invest in BizOps, and we continue to invest in the methodology that we are utilizing to drive our business forward. It's an important key part of where we're going. It's going to enable us to move into more markets. It allows us to meet high compliance requirements. It enables us to go into things like Ministry of Defence and Secret, and ultimately opens up other regions to us as an organization. So with that, I just want to thank you all for your time. I appreciate it. Hopefully I got us back on track. I've run 2 minutes over. Apologies for the lack of sound on my slides. I think they've been stored, so Shivani will be able to share those with you, or Frank will be able to share those with you with the sound. And I hope you got something out of this session. Enjoy the rest of the BizOps forum, and feel free to reach out if I can ever be of any help. Thank you.